Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into a topic that's blowing up right now, generative AI. Those AI systems that seem to be able to create anything you can imagine.
Exactly. From text to images to music. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Seriously. But it also raises some big questions like, is this true innovation or is it just high-tech plagiarism?
Right. That's the debate, isn't it?
We've got this really interesting blog post we're looking at today that gets into this very question. And I think to really understand it, we need to start with how these generative AI systems actually learn.
Yeah, because it's not just about memorizing data.
So what's the deal then? How do they do it?
It all comes down to something called probability distributions. Now, stay with me here.
Okay, I'm listening. Probability distributions sounds a little intimidating.
It might sound complicated, but it's actually pretty intuitive. Think about it like this. Imagine we're trying to teach an AI about bears.
Okay, I like bears.
Specifically, let's say we want to teach it about their weight. Now, we could try to feed it the weight of every single bear on the planet.
That's a lot of bears. And probably some pretty grumpy ones, too.
You're not wrong, but it's also totally impractical. Instead, generative AI takes a different approach. It looks at massive data sets, like huge amounts of information about bears, and learns the probability of a bear weighing a certain amount.
So it's not about knowing the exact weight of, every single bear in Yellowstone Park. It's more about patterns, right?
Right.
Like, what's the likely weight range for a grizzly bear versus a black bear?
Exactly. It's about understanding the distribution of bear weights based on all sorts of factors, species, age, even where they live.
Okay, I get the bear example, but how does that apply to something like creating images with AI? I mean, we're talking about millions of pixels, each with its own color value. It's a whole other level of complexity.
You're right, it gets even more complex with images. But the underlying principle is the same. Instead of bear weights, we're dealing with the probability distribution of pixel values.
So it's like, what's the likelihood of a pixel in a certain part of the image being a certain color based on all the other images the AI has seen?
Yes. And it's through understanding these intricate relationships between pixels that generative AI can create something that looks like a photorealistic image or a painting in the style of a particular artist.
Wow, that's incredible. But it also makes you wonder, where does that leave human creativity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So we've talked about how these AI systems learn, but this whole probability distribution thing, how does it connect to the idea of plagiarism? That's what's tripping me up a bit.
It's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of the debate around generative AI and art. Because while these AI have incredible potential for making truly new things, there are some tricky areas. This blog post points out two big ones: overrepresentation in the data, and then also those really specific instructions people give the AI.
Okay, let's unpack those a bit. What do you mean by overrepresentation in the data?
So picture this. An AI is learning from, millions of paintings. But most of them are Impressionism, like a ton of one Impressionist painter's style even. If you tell that AI, even with a totally unique prompt like a cat wearing a spacesuit on Mars, the picture it makes, it's going to lean towards that Impressionist look, brushstrokes, colors, the whole vibe.
So it's like if you gave a bunch of art students the same paints and told them to paint whatever they wanted, their styles would be different, but you'd still see that those limited colors influenced everything.
Exactly. The AI is showing what it's picked up from the data, and if that data is super heavy on one style, even if it's not copying directly, it's going to show up.
That makes sense. So that's one side of it, the data itself. What about those specific prompts you mentioned? How do those play into this whole plagiarism question?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. Let's say someone's using one of these AI tools, and they give it super detailed instructions, like, I want a painting exactly in the style of Van Gogh, but with a robot instead of a person, using the same brush strokes and colors as Starry Night. They might even give it a blurry picture to use as a starting point.
Okay, yeah, that's starting to sound like we're really pushing those boundaries.
Right, and this is actually playing out in the art world right now. There was this case a while back, an AI-generated artwork. They called it Theatre d'Opera Spatial, and it won first place in a real art competition, the Colorado State Fair, I think.
Wait, seriously, didn't that cause a huge controversy? I think I remember hearing about that.
Oh, yeah, huge. It turned out the artist had used an AI tool, Mid-Journey, I think it was, and he'd given it super specific prompts to get the image he wanted. Now, he was open about using AI, but it still sparked this whole debate about whether it was fair to have it in the competition with traditionally made art.
Wow. So what happened? Did they disqualify him?
Actually, no. The judges knew he'd used AI, and they said it fit the rules. But it still started this firestorm in the art world. Some people were like, that's cheating. Using AI is totally different. But then others were saying, hey, it's just a new tool, like a digital paintbrush. The artist's vision is what matters.
I bet. That brings up so many questions about what art even is anymore. And what does originality even mean if AI can make stuff like this?
Totally. And this is why that case is so important. Directly copying someone's artwork, that's a clear violation.
Right.
But with AI learning in this totally different way, it's not so simple. Where's the line?
Yeah, it's a total gray area, and the technology is way ahead of the rules, so how do we navigate this? It's wild, right? Like we're trying to make rules for something we're still figuring out ourselves.
It really highlights how much our ideas about art are being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it about the process, the tools, or the final result? There are no easy answers.
Nope, definitely not. And it seems like everyone's got an opinion on it.
It's true. Some people think using AI in art, it's like taking a shortcut.
Yeah.
Like it's less authentic or something.
Yeah, like it's removing the human element.
Exactly. But then others see it totally differently. They see it as this powerful new tool, a way to push creative boundaries even further.
It's like any new technology, right? There's that adjustment period where we figure out how it fits into our world. Like photography was controversial at first too, wasn't it? People debated if it was real art.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now look at it. It's its own art form with endless possibilities. And I think that's what's so important to remember here. This tech is still evolving. We're just at the beginning of something potentially huge.
And I think that's what makes this whole conversation so fascinating. It's not just about generative AI, it's about what it means to be creative in the 21st century.
100%.
Hmm.
This tech forces us to really examine our assumptions about art, originality, even what it means to be human. I mean, if an AI can create something we find beautiful or moving, doesn't that say something about the nature of creativity itself?
It's a total mind bender, and it makes me wonder what groundbreaking art will be created with these tools as they keep getting more advanced. It's an exciting but kind of scary thought at the same time.
Absolutely. It's both exhilarating and a little unnerving. But one thing's for sure, generative AI is here to stay. And it's going to keep pushing those boundaries.
Well, on that note, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all of this? Have you experimented with generative AI? Head over to our socials and share your thoughts. Until next time, keep exploring, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.